with 11 seconds. Back for Jorgensen. Chad Jorgensen launches a backhand toward the end zone. This is going to be the game. Joe Clutton battling for position. He tips it to the end zone where it's caught by Elijah Jaime at the buzzer to tie the game.
We are standing at the very spot where last August Joel Clutton skied over the pack, deflected a floating disc into the end zone. Elijah Jaime made UFA history, and now we're back at TCO Stadium in the Twin Cities. Evan Lepler with Charlie Eisenhood. We welcome you to the 2024 UFA Playoff Preview presented by Power Up Premium Trail Mix. We're closing in on the playoffs, Charlie, and this year feels as wide open as any professional ultimate playoffs we've ever seen.
No question. I think you look around the league, not only do we not know who the 1 seed is going to be in 3 of the divisions right now, but we also have no real confidence in who's going to get out of the divisions and make it to championship weekend. Usually at this time, we don't even care about these last couple of weeks of competition. We're looking ahead to the postseason, but we still have to pay attention to what happens in the final week of the regular season. And then who knows, we could see a 3 seed make a run all the way to the title. That seems totally within the realm of possibility this year.
Before we preview the playoffs, we got to preview the final weekend of the regular season, which feels a lot like a playoff weekend on WatchUFA.tv, because you got a West Division game, Seattle and Salt Lake, that'll decide the winner of the West. You have DC at New York in Hartford, as I just got bit by a mosquito here under the lights. We'll press on. And you also have Carolina at Atlanta to decide first place in the South. As a reminder of the UFA playoff format, 3 teams in each division make it to the dance. Number 3 goes to number 2. The winner plays at number 1. Top 4 division champions at the end of the first couple of rounds of the playoffs make it to championship weekend, which is in late August in Salt Lake City. And we might as well start there. Salt Lake City hosting Seattle this coming Friday night, the first and only meeting of the regular season. The Cascades are the biggest surprise in the West. Salt Lake's a team that everybody expected to just march to championship weekend, but the Cascades have other ideas.
You know, it's going to be a great game because it still feels like Seattle hasn't really been tested. They haven't really had that game where you're like, okay, they got to win this one. Well, they finally get it, and it's now, and it's for the 1 seed. And it feels like the air could get let out of the Seattle balloon if they come out and they get rocked in that game. But on the other hand, Salt Lake no longer feels like a clinch, like a lock. And now we have this question about how good is Seattle? They're going to get a chance to prove it. We know there's some great players on that team. Are they finally gelling enough to be able to go in and take down a really system-oriented team like Salt Lake?
They've never done it before. Salt Lake is 4-0 against Seattle, but Friday night, we'll see if the Cascades can change the story. On Saturday evening, you'll be in Hartford as the producer on Watch UFA TV for DC at New York. They've had a lot of history between the two of them. DC has the leg up with a win in our nation's capital back in June, but New York, just the level they're playing at down the stretch is daunting for the Breeze.
How can you not see what they've done the last 3 weeks against Salt Lake and now against Minnesota and not be impressed? I mean, they just dominated 2 division-leading teams in back-to-back games, and they're going up against a DC team that they nearly beat with a completely random roster filled with guys who normally don't even play for the team. So I feel like New York definitely in the driver's seat, but do not overlook DC. For as much as New York has won that matchup over the last few years, and it seems like every big game has gone New York's way, DC has a chance to rewrite the script this year, and they definitely have the offense to do it. They're going to have to go and get a win at some point in New York. Maybe it'll be this weekend, and they can clinch at least a 2 seed, if not the 1 seed.
And there are some folks in New England saying, don't forget Boston. The Glory have a chance as well, with Jeff Babbitt leading that team. They got to go to Canada for the final weekend of the season. Those will be interesting games to follow as well, especially the Sunday game when Boston goes to Montreal. But also on Saturday night, 6 p.m. New York plays DC. At 7:30, Carolina and Atlanta will get things rolling. It's the 4th meeting of the season between the two. The home team has won each of the first 3. Home team has won 7 of the last 8 in this series. Winner gets the number 1 seed in the South.
Yeah, and I mean, I really don't know what to expect in that one because we've seen Carolina come out and really take care of business in the first 2 matchups in the season, and then Atlanta with a full-strength roster looks like the much better team. Carolina's been in a little bit of a funk, Is that going to continue? That would be big warning bells if they get beaten again badly by the Hustle. But it's a great opportunity for all these teams to get a test that matters, but that isn't an elimination game. And we're going to see where things stand, and then teams will have a chance to make adjustments before the postseason.
Well, and I was looking this up earlier. In 6 of the last 7 postseasons, we have seen at least one team win on the road, or one team lose at home, if you think about it that way. Obviously, last year, the Atlanta Hustle lost at home in a heartbreaker in double overtime against the Austin Soul. The scar tissues are still very fresh. See if the Hustle can overcome past demons like we've seen Carolina do in the past. When they finally won, they had some really brutal losses to try and overcome in previous years in the playoffs. Now we're going to go team by team and pick one player that we think is just going to be the X factor, and we're each going to pick one. Let's start in the West with the Seattle Cascades. Who's the guy that's most important in your mind?
Well, I don't know. Is it fair to call this guy an X factor? I'm going to go with Khalif El Salam. Khalif has the veteran skills and leadership to carry this largely very young roster through the postseason and make a real push for the first time since, wow, what was it, 2016? I just feel like Khalif, obviously a very well-known quantity, but he raises his game where the stakes are the highest, and I think we're going to see him come out and just have huge games against Salt Lake now and in the playoffs.
And obviously Zeppelin Rounding is an important player, but I got my eyes on Lucas Ambrose because we saw what he did in the playoffs last year against Colorado. Get this, Lucas Ambrose is trying to become the first UFA player ever to lead the league in blocks in back-to-back seasons.
Wow.
He's had an incredible first 2 years in the league. He's a big moment type guy. And look, he didn't play great against the Shred in the West Final last year after he was phenomenal against Colorado. So we'll see what he can do against Salt Lake. Meanwhile, the Shred have a litany of talented players, but you got your eye, I think, on one of their veterans that's been there before.
You know, I go to the veterans, don't I? But it's because they're the ones who know how to help a team step up in the big spots. I'm going with Grant Lindsley. He played horrible against New York 2 weeks ago. He has got to be better. He can be better. He's one of the most veteran players in the league, if we're being honest. And I mean, he's got the pedigree all the way back into his high school days playing at Paideia. I just feel like we saw him on this field last year be the reason that Salt Lake got to the final and was at least briefly in a game with New York. And I think that he, you know, you can talk about the Will Selfridges, you can talk about the Jordan Kerrs. At the end of the day, the team succeeds when Grant is playing well and helping them kind of weather the storm in those big moments.
One of the issues for the Shred is that neither Selfridge nor Kerr have been totally healthy.
It's true.
Selfridge is been working his way back since early in the season. Jordan Kerr just got his cast off his pinky, so he's got 2 full hands now to play, which he didn't have against New York. Jordan's numbers in 4 games as a member of the Shred against Seattle. 4 games, 24 assists, 13 goals in 4 games. He has owned the Cascades in the past. I like his chances to try and do so again, but perhaps going against Lucas Ambrose, who could be on him defensively, that could change the...
What are you going to do if your 2 X Factors play against each other?
Change the dynamic. Well, that's who we'll see exactly who's the most important. All right, let's move to the East game, DC at New York, a matchup we've seen so many times. You could pick Rowan, you could pick Johnny. There are a lot of good players on DC that you could choose from. Who you got?
Okay, I'm going real. I'm truly going X Factor here instead of picking the veteran. Cole Jurek is my X Factor pick, okay? Cole Jurek has quietly grown into one of the best cutters in the league, and if he comes out and has a big postseason and is consistent and doesn't turn it over, I think that DC has a chance to go win a title this year. Not just get out of the East, not just get past New York, but actually straight up win the title. And yes, the guys you mentioned, obviously a lot of important pieces on their O-line. It's easy to look at the throwers for this DC team, but the problem has been in the past that they get a little too throw heavy and they rely too much on the handlers and they don't have those options downfield. Jurek is the guy, especially with Christian Boxley not suiting up this year.
I'm looking at a DC thrower, but not for the O-line. For the D-line, Thomas Edmonds is become maybe their most important guy. His last 3 games, he hasn't played a single O-point, but he's got 10 assists, and the Breeze have won every game. And his ability to not just make plays defensively, but convert breaks is just a gigantic part of what this DC team has been about. He's kind of bounced back and forth. You could say the same thing. Cole Jurek has played some D this year as well. But I think, look, the Breeze did not fare well against New York late last year because they couldn't get the disc and they couldn't convert breaks. Thomas Edmonds is going to be absolutely crucial. What about for New York? We've obviously seen a lot of different guys for the Empire looking sharp late in the year.
I think the thing that's really driven them to their recent success, though, has been their defense, and I think it starts with Marquez Brownlee. I really like what I've seen from him the last few weeks. And you look at what he did against Salt Lake. I mean, I think he was the best player in that game. He has grown into a role where he can go quarterback the team after getting a block and make the big throws and make the big plays. I feel like in the past he's kind of been the downfield guy, but he's slowly formed into a handler, and he's been really effective for them. I think he could have a big postseason.
Well, they did not miss him too much against Minnesota because they found a way to win. But I hear you out. Marquez has been playing, like, as you said on the Salt Lake broadcast, like a member of the national team. He has lifted his game. Another guy who usually lifts his game late in the season, Playoff Jack. There's a reason we call him Playoff Jack. It's because if you look at the numbers, they do tick up in the postseason. Every single year of Jack's New York career, his completion percentage is better in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. You think about how hard that is to do with the defenders you're going up against. But his scoring numbers go up, his completion percentage numbers go up, and obviously he's made some huge plays late in games to get it done for the two-time reigning UFA champions. New York, D.C., going to be a great game. That's at 6 o'clock this Saturday night. And then 7:30 on Saturday, Carolina at Atlanta. First place in the South is on the line. The Flyers have a lot of good players. Who's your eye on?
Oh my goodness. I mean, this team, what I love about Carolina is that they can just roll out any number of guys in all these kind of hybrid positions, and it always seems to work out well. But I'm going to go with Alan Laviolette, going back to my veteran well, and that's because when we've seen Flyers with Alan and Flyers without him over the last couple of seasons, and it's noticeable how much better they play when he's on the field. And so I think he will be a real X factor for them. Again, and it's really, for him, it's not as much about the leadership side of it. It's about his ability to connect their downfield players with their handler set. He's one of the best in the league at doing that, and it honestly sometimes feels like he does it quietly, even though he's just a total killer out there.
Well, he was a star when they won the championship in 2021, and he and Eric Taylor, kind of similar players, hybrid connectors. Obviously, Laviolette's an important guy. I got my eye on the youngster, Toby Brooks. I mean, just coming off a college Rookie of the Year performance for Colorado. Mike DeNardis a year ago called him the next Carolina Ultimate Chosen Son. So this is a guy that really has all the tools, and it feels like this year, coming back after the college season, has kind of come into his own for the Flyers. And look, not a guy that they had early in the year, but coming in late, kind of doing what Jack Williams did back in 15 and 16 when he was playing college at Wilmington and then showed up late in the season for the Flyers. Toby Brooks has that type of Jack Williams-esque potential.
He's been a real spark plug too. I mean, yes, he's got so much talent. It's coming out of his ears.
What about for Atlanta?
For Atlanta, look, I'm going to just keep it fairly straightforward on this one. I'm going to take Brett Holzmeier. I mean, I think it's not exactly like the typical X Factor type guy, but at the end of the day, Brett has not been his best in their biggest games. And I think that's why I call him an X Factor, because we know what he can do. We've seen the level of play that he can bring. And now he's got to do it in the playoffs, in the big games. A chance to go not just a championship weekend and finally get past Carolina, but to go all the way and win a title as the favorites right now, the odds-on favorites in the league. And I think Brett has the tools. He's got all that he needs. Does he have it here?
He might be the MVP of the league heading down the stretch, and obviously the playoffs will have something to say about that as well. He does have some demons to exercise, if you can put it like that. So those are the three games that we're most looking forward to in Week 13. Seattle, Salt Lake on Friday night, and then New York and D.C. get things started at 6 o'clock on Saturday. Carolina, Atlanta follows at 7:30. We'll have a very special preview edition of Live with Let. It'll air on YouTube and WatchUFA.tv starting at 5 p.m. this Saturday night to get you set for the slate of Ultimate, and we'll have all the playoff scenarios. We'll figure out what exactly is going on in the Central with second and third. We'll have the point differentials. I'll have my abacus all ready to go to find out what decimal points we need to be aware of. So that's coming up at 5 p.m. on Saturday as we get set for a great weekend of Ultimate. Charlie, final thoughts as we head down the stretch of the 2024 season.
I'm so excited. I feel like we could see 3 teams win and get home field, and then all 3 of those teams might lose in the playoffs before they even get to championship weekend. And that's you got to tune in and watch these games.
Yeah, expect the unexpected, perhaps. WatchUFA.tv is the place to see all of the action heading down the stretch. A subscription, if you haven't gotten one before, has never been more worth it. And we are very excited to watch all these games unfold. Hope you are too. Thanks so much for being a part of the 2024 UFA playoff preview. We're standing on a historic spot here in Minnesota. Where will the history unfold this year? Look forward to watching it with you on WatchUFA.tv. For Charlie, I'm Evan. Thanks for watching.